Yamato class. The Yamato class was built by the Imperial Japanese Navy during the Second World War and remains the most famous super battleship class ever created. These ships were designed around the idea that Japan could not match the industrial power of larger nations, so each battleship needed to be stronger than any opponent it might face. The class carried enormous 18.1-inch guns, the largest ever fitted to a battleship, along with heavy armor intended to withstand massive punishment. Although impressive on paper, changing naval warfare and the rise of aircraft carriers limited the impact of these giants before the war ended. Montana class. The Montana class was an American super battleship design that never reached construction. Developed during the Second World War, it was intended to surpass existing American battleships in firepower, armor, and overall combat strength. The ships would have carried 12 16-inch guns and significantly greater protection than the Iowa class. However, as aircraft carriers became increasingly important, the United States shifted resources away from battleship construction. The Montana class remained on the drawing board and became one of history's most famous unbuilt warship projects. A 150 class. The A-150 class, sometimes referred to as the Super Yamato project, was Japan's planned successor to the Yamato class. Designers sought to create an even more powerful battleship capable of overwhelming any enemy vessel. Proposed plans included massive 20-inch guns, larger than anything previously installed on a warship. Only limited information survives because many records were destroyed during the war. The project never advanced beyond the planning stage, but it remains one of the most ambitious battleship concepts ever proposed. H-39 class. The H-39 class was the first major step in Germany's plan to build a new generation of powerful battleships before the outbreak of the Second World War. Intended as part of a broader naval expansion program, these ships would have been larger and stronger than the famous Bismarck class. Their design combined heavy armor, long operational range, and powerful main guns. Construction preparations began, but wartime demands and resource shortages prevented the project from moving forward. H-41 class. The H-41 class represented an evolution of the earlier H-39 design. German naval planners increased armor protection and expanded the ship's overall size to improve combat performance. The class reflected a growing belief that future battleships would need to survive increasingly powerful naval guns and aerial attacks. Despite detailed planning work, the project remained theoretical and never entered production. H-42 class. The H-42 class pushed German battleship concepts into even larger territory. Designers envisioned a vessel significantly heavier than existing warships, carrying larger guns and stronger protection. The project demonstrated how naval architects continued searching for greater firepower and survivability, even as aircraft were becoming dominant at sea. The design remained purely conceptual and was never approved for construction. H-43 class. The H-43 class expanded upon previous German concepts with even greater displacement and weapon size. These ships would have dwarfed most battleships of their era. While technically impressive on paper, practical challenges such as construction costs, dockyard limitations, and wartime realities made the project increasingly unrealistic. The class exists today mainly as an example of how far battleship design ambitions could reach. H-44 class. The H-44 class was the largest and most extreme battleship proposal produced by Germany during the war. The design called for a vessel so enormous that it would have exceeded the size of nearly every warship ever planned. Massive guns, extraordinary armor, and tremendous displacement made it more of a theoretical exercise than a practical project. Although never intended for immediate construction, the H-44 remains one of the most famous what-if warships in naval history. Lion class. The Lion class was Britain's attempt to develop a new generation of powerful battleships before the Second World War. Designed as successors to earlier British battleships, these vessels would have featured modern protection systems and powerful 16-inch guns. Construction began on some ships, but changing wartime priorities halted progress. The class reflected Britain's desire to maintain naval strength during a period of rapid military competition. Sovietsky-Soyuz class. The Sovietsky-Soyuz class was the Soviet Union's effort to enter the ranks of nations-building super battleships. These ships were intended to become the largest and most powerful vessels ever operated by the Soviet Navy. Their design combined heavy armor, large-caliber guns, and impressive dimensions. Construction started on several ships, but industrial difficulties and the outbreak
of war prevented completion. None of the vessels were finished, yet the class remains an important part of naval history. Alsace class. The Alsace class was a French battleship design developed during the late 1930s. Created as a response to increasingly powerful foreign warships, it was intended to improve upon the earlier Richelieu class. Several design variants were studied, featuring larger armaments and increased protection. The German invasion of France brought the project to an end before construction could begin. Tillman battleships. The Tillman battleships were a series of extraordinary American studies conducted in the early 20th century. Rather than creating a specific class for immediate service, naval architects explored the largest battleships that existing infrastructure could theoretically support. These concepts featured immense size, huge gun batteries, and unprecedented firepower. Although none were built, the Tillman studies remain some of the most ambitious battleship designs ever examined by any navy.